Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really powerful story about one man's journey from a life that was just falling apart to, well, finding real, authentic strength. It's all about facing your past to create a totally different future.
So, that's the big question, right? What does happen when those masks we all wear start to crack? We're going to get into that by looking at the story of George Hayworth. This is a guy who hit a major breaking point when the entire life he'd constructed just to hide his own insecurities, well, it all came crashing down around him.
Yeah, this is really a story of transformation. We're going to follow his journey from start to finish, from where these struggles even began back in his childhood, all the way to the crisis that completely unraveled his life, and then, most importantly, to the wisdom he fought so hard to gain on the other side.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. George's story kicks off in what, from the outside, probably looked like a totally normal childhood. But you know how it is, beneath the surface there was this intense turmoil in his family, and that's where the seeds of a really deep insecurity were planted. And those seeds would go on to shape the entire man he would become.
And look at this timeline. Between 13 and 16, wow, that's a critical time for anyone. For George, it was a total perfect storm. He talks about being 13, just lying in bed listening to his parents scream at each other and feeling completely powerless and just ashamed. And that feeling, it just got worse and worse as his family completely fell apart. So this voice gets stuck in his head, right? This quote just says it all. He's constantly thinking, if they only knew the real me, they'd want nothing to do with me. And that thought becomes the engine for his whole life. He becomes obsessed with building this perfect exterior, acing school, crushing it in sports, and then joining the military. It was all a massive, desperate attempt to cover up that giant hole of insecurity he felt inside.
All right, so as he gets older, you'd think maybe those issues would fade away, right? Nope, they don't just disappear. Instead, they start bubbling up in some really problematic ways, especially when it came to his relationships. It completely twisted his whole idea of what love was supposed to be.
And a huge piece of this was something called covert emotional incest. Now that sounds intense, but what it means is that a parent, in this case his mother, starts confiding in a child like they're another adult. She'd tell him all these intimate details about the divorce, telling him it was because he was so mature. Can you imagine? That plus some other factors just gave him a totally warped view of what real intimacy and love even looked like.
So what does he do? He goes all in on the external validation. He joins the army, becomes a combat vet, marries the girl of his dreams. On paper, it's the perfect story, right? He must have thought, okay, I've finally done it. I've made it. I'm a man now. But here's the thing. Those were all just bigger, better masks. And the foundation he'd built his life on, it was about to completely crumble.
And this is where everything hits ahead. The breaking point, the absolute rock bottom, comes after his daughter is born. A moment that's supposed to be one of the happiest in your life, right? For him, it became the trigger that made every single one of his coping strategies, all those masks he wore, fail all at the same time.
The birth itself was just traumatic. His wife was in labor for 48 hours. It ended in an emergency C-section and she hemorrhaged. Just an absolutely brutal, devastating experience both physically and emotionally for her.
And then, after all that, his wife gets severe postpartum depression. And this is the crucial part. Instead of stepping up, instead of being the supportive husband she desperately needed, all of George's old anger came roaring back. He didn't see her pain. He saw her suffering as a personal attack. On him. Unbelievable.
And that twisted mindset? Well, it sent him down a really dark path. He cheated on her. He got caught. And in the middle of it all, he told his wife and their brand new baby girl to get out of the house. That's it. That's rock bottom.
But sometimes hitting rock bottom is the best thing that can happen, because there's nowhere to go but up. For George, this absolute low point became the solid ground he needed to start a really brutal, really honest, and in the end, a totally life-changing journey toward healing. And get this, he says that in his very first therapy session, the physical stress of just telling the truth felt more terrifying than being shot at. He, a combat veteran, was more scared to be honest in that room than he was on patrol in Afghanistan. But when he finally told his story, he wasn't judged. He was met with grace. And that was the first little crack in that massive wall he'd built around himself. Then came this massive turning point. He's at a program for veterans, and he sees a group leader look at another vet, a guy in a wheelchair, and say this to him. He called him out, saying,
You're using your combat injury as an excuse to be a bad father. Just wow. Radical honesty right there. And the veteran's response? He stormed out. But then, about 30 minutes later, he came back, and he said, "You're right." Seeing that guy take complete ownership, it was like a lightning bolt for George. He realized in that instant that he'd been doing the exact same thing. He was using his childhood trauma as an excuse for all his terrible actions.
So, from the wreckage of his old life, after all this intense, painful work of confronting himself, George started to build something new. He developed a completely new framework for what he calls authentic manhood, and it's all built on these 4 really important balance pillars. So here they are: the king, the warrior, the mentor, and the friend and lover. And his whole argument is this: if any one of these pillars is missing, or even just a little bit out of balance, the whole structure of a man's life, it's going to collapse. It's just a matter of time.
Okay, let's break down that first one, the king. This is all about leadership, and he says it stands on 3 legs. You've got authority, which is just the ability to actually make a change. Then you have responsibility, which means you own the outcome, good or bad, no blaming. And finally, compassion, actually loving your people and showing them you do. And here's the key. If any one of those legs is missing, the whole stool of leadership falls over. You need all 3.
And the other pillars all build on that same idea of balanced strength. So the warrior isn't just some brute looking for a fight. His job is to defend the innocent. The mentor isn't some know-it-all who just wants to sound smart. He's there to train others and build them up. And the friend and lover, well, that's the heart of it all. It makes sure everything you do is tempered with love and isn't just for yourself.
And this slide just sums up the whole problem perfectly. When things are out of balance, you get 2 extremes. You get the tyrant, all king and warrior, all strength but 0 love or compassion, or you get the pushover, the quote-unquote nice guy, who has love but has no strength, no backbone to actually lead or set boundaries. The whole point is that real, authentic strength is found right there in the middle, in that balance. And so George's story leaves us with this one last, really powerful thought to chew on. If a man's greatest threat to his own family is his own unregulated anger, what does true strength and protection really look like? After everything, he realized the biggest danger to his family wasn't something out there in the world. It was inside him. And that really makes you think, doesn't it? Maybe the ultimate test of a man isn't his power to fight the world, but his courage to finally master himself.